I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real? Or not?
I remember the summer of 2003. I was 7 years old, living in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. A young Legato entered Game Crazy. Rest in peace, Game Crazy, by the way. But I walked into this store with my brother hanging outside the door and he couldn't come in. Now, why couldn't he come in, you might ask? Well, he had got caught stealing NCAA March Madness 2003 a few weeks before and was banned from coming in. My older brother was trying to guide me to which game he wanted me to get for him, but I was 7 years old and didn't know how to follow directions yet. He asked me could he come in the store and show me which game I was to purchase. They obliged. I picked up the game and went to the register, and two men were waiting for me. Should we let him buy this game? His brother stole out of here, one of them asked. The other one said go ahead. That game was Kingdom Hearts. When we got home with the game and I watched my brother play it for the first time, I was amazed. I was enamored with the covert beginning. It raised a lot of intrigue with just a few simple sentences. And then Simple and Clean hit. The opening to Kingdom Hearts is something I'll never forget, and this is the moment that truly made me fall in love with video games. Yeah, I got WWE Here Comes the Pain for Christmas and I played that religiously, but it's hard to describe how I felt when Kingdom Hearts 1 opened. It told such an engrossing story from the very start. As a young kid with an older brother, oftentimes I had to wait my turn to play the game, and when my time came, I couldn't put this game down. The game opens up on Destiny Islands and you play as a young boy named Sora. Sora and his two friends, Riku and Kairi, are building a raft to try to get to new worlds. The night before they set off on his journey, darkness looms over Destiny Islands and it is attacked by black creatures, known as Heartless. After struggling to defend himself against the Heartless, Sora is gifted with a Keyblade, a special weapon that slices right through whatever the hell the Heartless are. Sora runs away to a cave and sees Kairi, but they both are blown away and drift apart. In another world, King Mickey. Wait, Mickey Mouse? Mickey Mouse has left this world because of the Heartless becoming overwhelming. He instructs his mage Donald and his knight Goofy to find the key. They travel to Traverse Town, where Sora has drifted to, and they team up in the quest to find Mickey, Kairi, and Riku, who has also vanished. Throughout their adventure together, Sora, Donald, and Goofy travel to different Disney worlds, locking the keyholes of each world to keep the Heartless away. But let's take a second and think about what I just said. We have a 14-year-old boy running around with different Disney planets, with Donald and Goofy trying to find King Mickey Mouse. Now on the surface, that sounds like it could be any children's video game, movie, or TV show, but I think the part that pulled me in the most was the other side of this crossover: Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is one of the most historic video game franchises ever, and around that time this game was released, Square Enix, the creators of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, was on the top of his game. Legend has it that a Square producer by the name of Shinji Hashimoto had been looking to develop a game similar to Super Mario 64 with the creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi. They started on a game but felt only Disney had established characters that were as well known as the Italian man with the mustache. Crazy thing is that around this time, Square and Disney worked in the same building in Japan, and Hashimoto ran into a higher up on the elevator and pitched the idea. And that's how the Kingdom Hearts we know today got its true start. But first, the game was said to be aimed way more at kids originally until Sakaguchi gave his input. He wanted the game to be as grandiose as a Final Fantasy game and felt like it would fail if it didn't. The director of the game, Tetsuya Nomura, expanded the game around a theme of the characters' hearts, and here we are. I think it's quite interesting because this is one of the first ever non-wrestling games I had ever played. This had a weighted story filled with a great original main character like Sora, and I loved characters like Donald and Goofy already. It was a game that had a very simple plot at the beginning but allowed itself to go so much further. I didn't know who none of the Final Fantasy characters were up to that point. I didn't find out until years later that folks like Sid or Aerith were in older Final Fantasy games. I thought the Disney side was the only side with established characters, but Nomura directed Final Fantasy VII, one of the greatest games ever made, so whether I knew what a Muggle was or not, it was going to be an interesting game regardless. Now, you might ask, if you didn't know anything about Final Fantasy, then how did that part draw you in? Well, what I mean by that is just the vibe of the game. It has the energy of a Final Fantasy game, but for a younger audience because of the Disney pairing. And that Final Fantasy like energy drew me in originally, whether I knew what Final Fantasy was in the first place or not, if that makes sense. But along with the story was a very simple but fun gameplay system. You're running around, swinging a giant key for 3-hit combos while Donald runs around using magic and Goofy bashes enemies with a shield. The combat will be greatly evolved in later games, but the original system in Kingdom Hearts 1 worked. From that moment on, action RPGs will be my favorite genre of video games. It's something about handing out ass whoopings while taking 20+ hour journeys through peaks and valleys. Director Tetsuya Nomura also played a huge part in the making of Final Fantasy 15, and that's one of my top 5 favorite games ever made, so I guess it all comes together. Whether I was 7 or 20 years old, I'm a fan of the formula. But back to Donald and Goofy, my favorite thing about the gameplay was the camaraderie I felt between the party of 3. Sometimes 4 when someone from a Disney world you were visiting wanted to jump in and fight. I never felt alone in this game. I felt like I was a part of something greater. At its core, Kingdom Hearts is just a story about friendship, the ups and downs, the happiness and the heartbreak. Sometimes I think about what if the cashiers at that Game Crazy didn't let me buy Kingdom Hearts from my brother? Would I have ever fell in love with gaming like I did after experiencing it? It's a question I'll never know the answer to, and that's fine with me. But anyway, y'all, appreciate y'all watching. My name is Legato, and I'm out. Peace.